So today I'm going to talk about how to find a business idea you love and launch it in 30 days. Now, before I start, can I just check, how many people are already running something of their own, running a business? So that's good half of you, maybe more. And who of you would like to do that and haven't started yet? So probably a fewer number. So I'll make sure I try and cover things that can be most interesting to you. And I'll tell you a little bit of my story from about 10 years ago. So back in 2002, I was a senior managing consultant at Deloitte, which for some people is their dream job, but I really didn't enjoy it. It was, the culture wasn't right for me. I found it very boring. I wanted to do something creative and just have total freedom. So when I left, I declared that I never wanted another job for the rest of my life, and I've stuck to it. And that's a kind of commitment that sometimes I've questioned, but I've always stuck to it. And when I left, I first of all went into independent consultancy around, I used to be an IT consultant in broadcast. And I went and did independent consultancy that paid me enough money that I only had to work about a quarter of the year rather than the whole year, which was great, and it was exciting, some of it. I mean, some of it was not so much fun, and even though I was in an exotic location, sometimes it was a bit of a miserable experience, and it kind of peaked. But the moment when I thought I had to get out of even this independent consultancy work and do something totally on my own, a business of my own, was when I was invited to South Africa for a couple of weeks at the South African Broadcasting Corporation. I thought, I'm going to get to see Johannesburg. This is going to be really cool. And on day one, I walked in, and they said, oh, by the way, we're in the basement and there are no windows. So this is the room, this is the scene that I had for 2 weeks. We just head down for 10 hours a day on PowerPoint, writing presentations. And, I'm grateful for the fact that I had a great job, but I thought, this is not for me, I've got to do something else. So I started doing my own thing. I trained as a life coach, and I trained as a psychotherapist. And I started working with people and running events. And that led to a book deal with Pearson for this book. And when it turned up, this box of books turned up in 2010. My book's called Screwwork, Let's Play. It was quite a moment. I opened this box. I'd never seen my own book before. And everything went a bit crazy after that. So very shortly afterwards, I got into the Sunday Times. I was very lucky, and luck is a factor, as Sanderson was saying, that I got into the Sunday Times like the week it came out, and was called a Buzz Book of the Summer, and then that led to a 2-page spread in the Times and the careers section. And for some bizarre reason, when they want to show someone as being a bit wacky and alternative, they photographed them. First of all, they said, get Converse shoes, you should go and buy some. I was already wearing some, but I went and bought some new ones specially. And secondly, they said, here's the space hopper, and the space hopper had been used so much that it was no longer staying up, and they had to leave the pump plugged in because Simon Pegg had been on it the week before, and some other slightly wacky guy the week before that. And it opens by saying John Williams in his Converse shoes sitting on a space hopper, and that was completely what they manufactured. But anyway, I was very grateful for it. They called me a careers guru, which is never a bad thing for your career. And so the book ended up number one in entrepreneurship and a bestseller in W.H. Smith's. And can I move this thing so I can see my slides slightly? And I decided to create some programs around this that I would enjoy doing. I wanted to create a business that would suit my personality, which is hopefully what we're all aiming to do here, something that I care about and that suits the way I want to work as well. So I created these big online programs that I could run from anywhere in the world. So this is one of them. It's called the 30-Day Challenge, and it's with 300 people around the world making an idea happen in 30 days. And so I went from this being my office to this being my office, and this was in Morocco earlier this year. So I could sit anywhere and work, and sometimes I do actually have a proper holiday as well, but I can go and run my business from anywhere. People are laughing at that for some reason. There's a naked guy in the picture, but I've not missed, I've not seen. And I ran my business from Bali for a month and from Australia for 6 weeks and so on. So that was the way I wanted to make it. And that's what I help people do. I want to help people create whatever your version of an ideal business is, and something that's going to make you happy. Something that feels so much more like play than work, hence the phrase, screw it, let's play. So I've got 4 secrets, because we have to have secrets in this kind of, in the self-help author world, right? So I've got 4 secrets of how to do that. And the first one is what the real challenge is in making something work when you've been used to being an employee. And the real challenge is not actually your social media strategy, or even picking the right idea, or picking the right team. When you're first starting in the world of self-employment, and some of them probably remember this, I still battle with it now, it's actually our mindset, and it's because we've been trained by school we've actually been brainwashed. This is what Seth Godin here, and what Seth says, he's a business guru for those who don't know him. Years ago, when you were about 4 years old, the system set out to persuade you of something that isn't true. Not just persuade, but drill, practice, reinforce, and yes, brainwash. The mission to teach you that you're average, that compliant work is the best way to reliable living, that creating average stuff for average people again and again is a safe and easy way to get what you want. And not only is that very disabling when you want to be an entrepreneur, because that kind of mindset doesn't work, it also doesn't work very well for even the world of employment now, because it's moving so fast that you need to be more flexible. It's not enough to just follow orders. So we've been trained to be a worker bot, which you are not. You were born a player and you were made a worker bot. And so a big part of getting used to running your own thing is to get the hang of not following orders, going the opposite way and not looking to others for direction, and being able to follow your own heart. So that's what I do. I help people become a player. I'm trying to reclaim that word, right? There is a positive, for some reason, worker is a positive word, and player has lots of negative connotations. So I'm trying to reclaim it. I'm not sure how well I'm doing so far. But this is one of my business meetings with one of my colleagues, Julia. We were recording a video in Finsbury Park in London for one of our courses. And, the things I do for work are the things I enjoy doing. So my second secret is my formula for finding a business idea that you really love. And this is what I call the play check formula, with 5 elements. And the very first one is that you've got to choose something you actually care about, that you're excited about, and has energy for you. Because it's really hard to be successful at something you don't care about. It's really hard to be successful at something you don't enjoy doing, because the whole thing is going to be a hard slog right from day one. So it's too easy to go, well, that's where the money is, I'll go over there. And if you have no interest, or it goes against your own values, it's not going to work. So that's like the foundation of everything else. But it's not enough. Do what you love, and the money will follow is incomplete careers advice, as far as I'm concerned. So the second element is genius. It means using some part of you or the other people in your team that other people don't have. So anything you find easy that other people don't find easy is a piece of genius. And this is referencing back to Seth. The education system does a fantastic job of convincing us all we're wonderfully mediocre. I mean, that was the impression I got coming out of school. Now, if you happen to really suit the educational environment, and you study hard, and it matches, you don't mind sitting and reading and studying and remembering and so on, then maybe you'll excel, and you'll then go, oh, actually, I'm not just average. But for everyone else, it kind of suppresses your personality. And it's too easy to come out thinking, well, your genius is this really pisses people off when I use this word, actually. Let's go, I'm not a genius. People on my courses have a real problem with it, which is why I use it. So genius is also your natural talents, rather than just I'm great at IT, or I'm a fantastic Java programmer, or I'm a brilliant user interface designer. It's like I'm natural with people. I just have a way of explaining complex things in simple ways. I'm great at getting a good deal and negotiating. I'm great at crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And that's all part of genius as well. So when you've got those two things in place, then you can create something of value. And what people often do is when they focus on the money, it doesn't work out. And if you focus on the value, you'll almost always end up with the money, as long as you've got a bit of kind of commercial sense going in there as well. So what I'm looking for people on my programs when they're starting something out right at the beginning is they're playing it out and experimenting. They're getting to know what they enjoy doing, what they're good at, and they put it into something and put it out into the world. And at that moment, people start retweeting it and sharing it and going, oh my God, can I buy this? Is this available? That's the point you've hit value. It doesn't matter if no money has exchanged hands. If everyone's going, oh my God, I want more of this, then that's the sign that you're on the right path. And there'll always be a way to then get paid for it. But the next element is, even if you've got something good, that's no good, that's not helpful if people don't understand the value you've created. So we might have all met somebody who's brilliant at something, but they can't get any clients, like a freelancer who's great, but they can't get any clients. And they haven't found a way to express what it is they do. So the fourth element is story. You need a story about the value you've created. And the story could be, in terms of a book, for instance, you can write the most interesting book in the world, but if it's got a crashingly dull title, it'll be really hard work to sell it. You can do sometimes by word of mouth, but you're putting a massive barrier up if you don't give it a good title. So it can be as simple as the title, it could be the subtitle in book terms. For a business, it could be your strap line. For software, it's like, I sometimes talk to people who run startups and they go, oh, well, our application can be used for all sorts of things. And I go, well, that's not really very compelling. I want to hear, like, it's the killer application for this particular thing. And then, ironically, when you look at who's using their software and what they're using it for, 80 to 90% are using it for one thing. So if you just take that and make that your story, then you can get your software out into the world in a much more compelling way, and it will really take off. Then you can always expand from there. So once you have these four elements in place, all you need then is a way for people to pay you. So thankfully, there are so many different ways of making money, so many different ways of packaging value. You could have, if you have a brilliant idea, if you've got something valuable to give to the world, you can sell that to people. You can work with people one-to-one. You can set up an automated platform where people use it as software. You can set up an event like this. So whatever the value is you've managed to create, whatever the concept is, or the idea, or something of use to other people is, you can deliver that in all sorts of ways. So there's creativity in this return element as well. And the real fun for me is when I work with people on finding a proposition that contains all these five elements. When you've got each of the five in place, it's like unlocking a lock, the tumblers of a lock, and suddenly the money switches on, everything starts working. So the question after that is, how do you find an idea with all these five elements? And the challenge is that the temptation is to sit around thinking and going, well, I haven't got the perfect idea, I won't do anything. And that really doesn't work very well, because then you're just not doing anything. And the first step of three is to brainstorm a list of all the things that you love doing and you're interested in. This is if you haven't started something yet. Or if you're looking at perhaps starting a new project within your current organization or your business or your career. The second thing is to do a brain dump of all the things, all the assets you've got, the spots of genius. If it's just you, then that's all the stuff you've got to offer the world. And for people who have got a team around them, and it's like, what are the brilliant bits of this team that we can put into a project? And then the third thing is to brainstorm ideas that combine these two elements that might be of value to people. So if we've got a real passion, we're all getting interested in this area over here, and we've got a fantastic user interface designer, we've got a fantastic person who does this, or whatever it might be, what proposition could we create to combine those? So, secret 3 is the truth about ideas. And I think part of the problem with the worker bot training is that we get at school and in employment is that we think that everything depends on the idea. So everyone's in love with the Dragon's Den kind of model of business, where you have to invent a completely new thing in order to be successful. And while that's entertaining TV, it's not true, of course. It's not the only way to make a living. So a lot of people starting out get stuck thinking, I don't have an idea, so I can't get started. Or what they do more likely is they think of an idea and get excited about it for a while, and then think of all the reasons why it won't work, and then put it aside, and then come up with another idea and get excited, but then find a reason why that won't work and put it away. So they just kind of go round and round in circles and get nowhere. So instead of that, when you understand how ideas really work, you realize that that's not necessary. You don't need to get stuck in that trap. And part of the reason why is because ideas evolve. So they start as one thing, but by the time you've got them working, they've turned into something completely different. So if we think about Happy Startup Camp, it might have started as something quite different. I don't know. It might have been plans for a different location or a different theme or a different feel. And then as you play it out, you go, oh no, this is clearly the way we should go. And these are the kind of people who are being drawn to it. And it's not always who you expect. So I always warn people that the idea you succeed with may bear no resemblance to the one you first started. And that often happens, it's really obvious in the creative world. So you start an album and you have a vision in mind, and then it turns into something. It's like it takes on a life of its own once you start to put it out into the air. And the ultimate example here is Facebook. So we probably all know the story of Mark Zuckerberg from this is a picture from The Social Network, the film about him, where Mark comes back pissed off and drunk one night and lashes together Face Mash, which is a little application on the Harvard servers to allow people to rate the relative attractiveness of their fellow students, which is tasteful stuff. And it was, gotta love that guy. And it was so popular that it crashed the servers. And when he then got involved with the Facebook, and there's some debate about where the idea came from, but let's not worry too much about that. He clearly took it and ran with it and really made a success of it. Clearly, he must have taken some inspiration from Face Mash, because he saw just how powerful it could be when you had the network effect online. And so he started the Facebook, but if you think now what Facebook looks like, it bears almost no relation to the Facebook. When they introduced the wall, which is such a key part of Facebook, the users, I don't remember this because I'm not sure I was using it then, but people hated it. And they went, this is awful, we hate this thing. Now when you think of Facebook, I can't imagine what it would be without having the wall. So he's willing, what's clever about Mark is that and everyone at Facebook, is that they take big risks and they're coming up with ideas all the time. So there was nothing fundamentally original about the idea of a social network at the beginning. It was how he evolved it and how he kept taking risks that made it work. So the bottom line is, don't ever obsess about what to start. Just start something, because you can change it or fix it on the fly. So the fourth and final secret is how to launch something in 30 days. And this is something I do with people twice a year in one of the big programs I run. And the key is to find the nugget in your idea. What's the bit of your idea that is most exciting to you, and actually what's most exciting to other people? And then how can you take just that part and launch it in 30 days? And then you probably might be, who's familiar with the concepts of lean startup? Yeah, so most of you. And it's an incredibly useful concept, if you're not familiar with it, to discover the power of a minimum viable product. So I know there's an expert on lean stuff here, or probably several. And a minimum viable product is the minimum version you can get of your product out into the marketplace that allows a forgiving audience to start using it, in order that they can give you feedback. And this is effective for almost anything you can do. And I actually teach people who want to write a book a similar methodology. Who's ever thought of writing a book? Who's interested in that? So a few of you, yeah. And I know it's a big passion project for lots of people. And who would like to write a book but hasn't actually started? So yeah, it's a similar number. And it's a big task to write a book. I'm currently writing a second book, and I'm quite late with it. So I don't appreciate when you're running a business, it's not a small task to do at all. And what I advise people to do is to blog it out. So play out your ideas, blog post by blog post, and put it out in the world and see what people respond to. And if people are saying, wow, we love this blog post, if one of them gets 10 more comments on it than another blog post, or something you tweet gets 10 more tweets than another tweet, then that's telling you something. The idea of sitting back and just starting with a blank Microsoft Word doc and then writing your entire book and then just handing it in or trying to sell it to a publisher is generally a very bad idea, unless you've done it several times and you know what you're doing. And even then, it's still more powerful to play it out, because in the process of writing it blog post by blog post, you'll find usually that it changes into a completely different book several times. And mine's changed into at least 3 different books along the way. So in fact, even the tweets, even the quotes that I've included in the book are partly influenced by the ones I tweeted, and some of them got a huge response. One of the most popular ones ever was, "I don't need more time, I need a deadline," which was by a famous jazz musician I've forgotten the name of now. And that was so popular that I've made that like one of the main quotes in there. So the idea overall is to put your time and energy into creating value, not the paraphernalia of business. So Paul Graham is a wonderful writer on the topic of entrepreneurship. Who knows Paul Graham from Y Combinator? Yeah, and if you've read his stories, he writes essays on his blog about entrepreneurship, which are really profound and simple and philosophical. He runs Y Combinator, which is, I think, was rated the #1 startup incubator in the world by Forbes, something like that. And what he says about entrepreneurship is fascinating. He says he's just come up with just 2 guidelines he gives to his startups that he is incubating at the beginning. And the first one is, make something people want. And the second thing is, don't worry too much about the money at the beginning. So he says, strangely, that kind of makes a startup sound like a non-profit. I mean, he gives there's quite an interesting talk about why that is. But the reason being that if you can make something that people really, really want, there will almost certainly be a way to monetize it. There are always exceptions to these rules, so I'm sure you can find some. But that's much more important than stressing about exactly how you're going to charge and exactly what the model will be. And there are some great famous examples. I think Google didn't know at the beginning how they were going to make money. And I think Facebook didn't know for sure right at the beginning. So what I help people to do is get version 1.0 out in 30 days, which for a big software project will be a bit of a stretch, I have to say. But you can often test the market for something, test the interest for something. You can, for instance, people think a book is a very long job, it might take you a year to write, but in that way, if version 1 is just 10 blog posts to see what people make of it, then you can actually get version 1.0 out in 30 days. And it's one of my favorite quotes. I think somebody attributed this to Dan Kennedy, who's a marketing expert. Version 1 is better than version none. And I love that because it's too easy to sit around not putting anything out there. My favorite story of a minimum viable product, of getting something out into the world as quickly as possible, is Nick Swinmurn, who was the original founder of Zappos shoes. And some might have heard this story, but it bears repeating. And when he started out, he wanted to prove that people would buy shoes online. And so his minimum viable product wasn't to build a big e-commerce site or to buy a giant warehouse and a fulfillment center to supply loads of shoes. His minimum viable product was simply to lash together a simple website where you could press a button to pay. And then he went to local shoe shops and he said to them, is it okay if I take a photo of your shoes, and if somebody buys it online, I'll buy it off you and send it to them? And they went, yeah, okay. So he took the shoes off the shoe shops and took a photo of them. And then when people pressed to buy it, it basically I think he did a PayPal request and sent them an invoice. And they paid it, and he would go and buy the shoe, put it in a box, package it up and post it to them. And he did that for the first, I don't know how many times he did it, but he did it for quite a period of time at the beginning. And clearly you can't make a very good profit. In fact, probably you make a loss doing that. But what he was trying to do was not make a profit. He was trying to prove that there was value in an online shoe shop. He was trying to test a proposition. And it worked. So he proved when other people, in fact, I think it was one of the things that convinced Tony Hsieh to invest in him and get involved with the company. So he proved that people would buy shoes online when everyone else said, oh, they'll never do it. And that enabled him to actually start what became a very successful business that was sold for $1 billion in the end. I don't know, he wasn't involved towards the end, but he kicked the whole thing off. So what I encourage people to do is don't think it out, play it out. To keep going through an iterative cycle of putting things into the world and seeing what the reaction is, and then adapting. So I talk about something called the play cycle, where you act first, you put something out into the world, a bit like in lean startup, there's a build, measure, learn cycle. Put something into the world, see what the reaction is, reflect on the results that you get, adapt what you're doing and put that back into action and put something out there. But the interesting about that play cycle process is it works at a very small level, a very tiny level of granularity as well. If you think moment by moment, if you're looking to find the work that makes you happy, what you can do is you try something and you try doing something and you notice, well, how am I finding this? Is this actually something I enjoy doing? Is this something that's making me happy? You can even rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And then go, well, what can I do about this? Maybe I can do more of this in my work. If I'm not enjoying it, can I change it in some way so that I do enjoy it? If you notice that, for instance, whenever you have a meeting with a certain member of your team or with a partner, where you come away feeling worse than you did going in, that's probably some information. It's really easy to ignore. So that's the play cycle. And this is one of the programs I run called the 30-Day Challenge, where we take people right from day one, where they're currently in a job and they have no idea what to do for a business, get them to come up with an idea and make it happen in 30 days. And then they have to share the results. And one of the most interesting pieces of that process is that the obstacle really is the fear. And the fear is of being seen, and it's actually a kind of fear of vulnerability. So when people declare, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to be a photographer, or I'm going to do an exhibition, what's really scary is the idea of, first of all, just declaring that, because then you're putting yourself out into the world as a photographer, writer, or entrepreneur. And secondly, actually sharing the results of that can be quite terrifying for people. And I think that's what stops people a lot of the time.